The gameplay of fully airborne character is something we haven't seen much of in a hero shooter before, and that's why it took time for players to adjust and fell in love with Iron Man. Sure, he had humble beginnings, but with time people discovered how to utilize roofs, pillars and other tall structures for cover, as well as that he can flank like no one else. And now he is much more appreciated than he was at the day of Rivals release. But there's more than one flyer in Rivals, and all the same principles should in theory apply to Storm as well. After all, she can maneuver in the air the same way Iron Man can, she also has self-applicable damage boost just like he has, and powerful ultimate ability, just like he does. Then why is Storm seemingly unloved? Well, for starters, someone decided Storm's primary fire should be a slow-moving projectile with steep damage fall-off, with no splash damage, and without ability to headshot. Not to mention the damage of aforementioned projectile sits somewhere in the middle between Vanguards, where Hulk, Murica and Thor need 6 melee hits or 4 lightning throws with Awakening Rule in Thor's case to down 250 health target, while both Groot and Magneto 4-shot those targets consistently. Storm needs 5 shots at 15 meters, and her damage fall-off is so steep that these 5 shots become 10 at as little as 30 meters. Meanwhile, fucking Hawkeye can 2-shot the tanks from twice that distance. Not to mention, damage fall-off affects flyers much more drastically than other kinds of DPS for very simple reason. There was once this guy in ancient Greece who really liked triangles, and to everyone who just uttered same, no, he liked geometry. But thanks to him, everyone has it ingrained in their head from as early as 3rd grade that in every orthogonal angle, the side opposite to the right angle is longer than either of the sides adjacent to said angle. Or to speaking normal, your distance from the ground is also distance. Storm can be well within her 5-shot kill range horizontally, but all it takes for her is to ascend few meters and suddenly that is 6, 7 or even more shots to kill. Meanwhile, Iron Man can 3-shot squishes from any range, because he wasn't made by talking stupid guy at the studio. Verticality of Storm's base movement options wasn't taken into consideration whatsoever in making of her base skills. The unique property of her basic attack that's supposedly justifying the piece poor damage is the fact that it pierces. Now riddle me this, at what angle you're supposed to fire these things to make them pierce through the enemy team? Certainly not a single bloody angle that lets you get your feet off the ground. The same applies to her alternative fire. She fires a piercing lightning that's best utilized fired from ground level, or just above ground level, and also it has capped range at like 40 meters. Why? Then you get to her passive buff bubble, and are even more puzzled. Firstly, her buff applies within a sphere around her, meaning if she, for example, flies up into the sky, the people below her on the ground level no longer receive that buff. The same applies to the damaging portion of the ability. If she's high enough above the enemy, the lightning won't reach them. I do not understand whatever design principle was put into Storm's gameplay design. She's a flying character that needs to stay close to the ground and close to the enemies for extended periods of time to perform optimally. There is quite a lot of characters that have to get up close to the enemy to do their shit in this game, but they either have insane mobility, a way to isolate targets, or insane burst, usually at least 2 of those. Storm doesn't. Storm has to slowly drift up at her normal speed, because she needs that empower lightning in the actual combat, not get immediately shredded by the entire enemy team, and stay up close for the entire duration of her empower to do any significant damage. She is designed like a tank. And not a good tank like Doctor Strange, who has a shield to cover his approach and AoE burst damage for when he finally gets in. Storm doesn't have burst, doesn't have mobility, doesn't have range damage, and has to stay on the ground and in the face of the enemy for really bloody long to deal her actual damage. Storm is designed as a tank with a DPS's hero health bar. Someone has to lose social credit over this. This is unforgivable. But okay. How do we fix this? Firstly, Her alternative fire is currently the only dependable button in her entire kit, and reducing its cooldown would go long ways in increasing Storm's performance. Secondly, change the shape of her AoE boost and damage so its upper half is a dome like it is right now, but lower half is a cylinder, so that the buff-debuff area on the ground stays effectively the same no matter how far up Storms actually is. Then buff her speed buff, it is barely noticeable at all. Her damage buff is piss poor as well because whoever made her primary fire was cruel. 50 damage a hit that cannot critically hit is simply not salvageable with a percentage damage boost. However, if we increase her base damage, her damage boost will be worth more as well. I'd say her primary needs to be at least 70 damage a hit, move faster and have less steep damage fall-off. 70 is still less than Iron Man does on direct hit, but just enough to 4-shot squishes in short range. Currently, Storm is very dependent on this thing to hit, because the rest of her damage is as little as a fart in a closed space. The problem is this thing isn't dependable. The few changes I proposed could be enough to bring her up to speed. Faster, more damaging projectile, shorter altfire cooldown, better speed buff, and reshape of her buff AoE. Doing any more than that at once runs the risk of overbuffing, and it would at least be wise to see how character performs after these or other changes. But who knows? Season 1 starts in a week, maybe we see some balance changes coming from NetEase in Clutch for Storm. In the meantime, I wish for you all enemy teams with aim as bad as mine. Also, a generous sign of gratitude towards all the generous Patreon supporters who continuously consider my dubious quality content worth their money. Rapface out.